Hello everyone, Ted Lacksonen, the Country Thinker here, coming to you live from the rolling hills of central Ohio with another exciting episode of The Eagle Has Crashed. Now last week we learned that the character Grace Mercer, lovely old lady, she's not getting her Social Security checks. And I just wanted to make the point that if you study enough of these debt crises, it's pretty much a universal rule that it's the poor and the middle classes and the working classes who really take it on the chin. Now, some of you may think that the idea of cutting Social Security checks and blaming it on a computer glitch is beyond what a government would really do. But let me remind you that the nation of Greece, we found out a few years back, had been hiding its entire defense budget because it claimed that it was top secret information. So there really is no limit to what governments will do in an economic debt crisis. Now, I put a lot of research into this novel, and most everything that occurs here has happened somewhere or is happening. So some people have said that complained that the novel is implausible, at least one reader did. But unfortunately, entirely too much of it does come true. Now, for example, in today's episode, Megan Calhoun, the oncology nurse, the potty mouth redneck, she's going to run into a situation which actually happens in healthcare. It's called a RAC. Excuse me. And basically what happens is a service provider, such as a hospital, performs a service of some sort and then files for reimbursement from Medicare. Medicare pays it. And then later the Medicare folks decide that they don't want to pay for that anymore. But not only do they just stop paying, they also go back and require the hospitals and the doctors and so forth to pay the government back for what they had properly done and been paid for in the first place. It's called a RAC. So when you hear this part with Megan Calhoun and it sounds kind of crazy, it actually happens, and it's something that the Bush administration was particularly fond of doing, which I can tell you because my wife is an occupational therapist and works in a therapy department. So anyhow, so an awful lot of this is true in one form or another. And so let's get back to the partly fictional novel, The Eagle Has Crashed, and we'll begin October of 2029. Greenwing Industries was a high-tech manufacturer of windmill blades, electric motor housings, and an ever-changing array of precisely machined products, many of which the workers and even management did not know the function of or where around the globe they might end up. Unlike the early industrial era, when manufacturing facilities were constructed for a specific purpose, Greenwing's Newark, Ohio facility was intentionally generic and flexible. It was a vast slab of concrete beneath steel trusses and wrapped in painted aluminum sheeting, like a minor league hockey arena without the stands. The floor of the plant was filled with computer-driven robotic machining equipment, including lathes, pneumatic presses, water jet cutters, 3D printers, and TIG welders. Each was carefully positioned for efficiency by industrial engineers, like movable houses in a suburban subdivision with roadways for forklifts and skid steers instead of electric minivans. Bucking the national trend, Greenwing was buzzing busy, having secured a contract to manufacture thousands of whoozy-whatsits to improve airplane fuel efficiency pursuant to a new mandate of the FAA. The workers scurried about in white lab coats and safety glasses, unsure whether Greenwing was a permanent oasis of productivity or if the frenetic activity was merely a storm before the calm. As the workers went about their tasks, a voice boomed from the rafters, far too loud to be the intercom system. "Good morning, everyone!" The workers looked around for the source of the voice. Gradually, the three-dimensional holographic image of a 20-foot-high cartoon cat appeared, sporting Blues Brothers-style glasses and a hat. It was projected from a small device secured to the underside of a metal truss near the center of the plant. The holographic cat did the butter churn, then threw out its front legs. I said, "Good morning!" Every machine in the facility was turned off as all eyes were drawn to the cartoon animal. The cat smiled. "How about we start off with a little joke? Okay. Two guys go into a bar. The first one says, How are we going to pay for a beer? The second one says, I have no idea since our jobs just got shipped off to Bangladesh. The cat put his paws on his belly and laughed with his whole body. That one slays me. At the far end of the plant by the management offices, several men in suits were barking orders to a worker as he climbed into a scissor lift. But seriously, the cat continued, do you think you're going to keep your job if management thinks it can make an extra 50 cents by sending the work to Cambodia? The cat shook its head. No, you won't. He took off his sunglasses as the scissor lift slowly motored down the center aisle of the plant. Let me give you a little history lesson, folks. In the late 1800s, workers were just tools used by greedy industrialists and the politicians they bought. But after 1900, things changed. Workers unionized and stopped most of the worst business practices. Once America went union, it became the greatest economic power the world has ever seen. But by the end of the 20th century, workers got complacent and fewer joined unions. America has been in decline ever since. The scissor lift stopped beneath the cat's rear paws and began lifting the worker into the air and through the hologram. The cat began dancing a jig. Today, the cat proclaimed, you don't need the union to protect you from getting your hand chopped off in a machine, but to protect you from having your job sent to some nasty third world country where they don't care if their workers get maimed. With unemployment rising fast, you need to protect yourselves. The workers of Green Wing Industries need to unionize. Congress ain't getting it done because they're too busy fighting each other to worry about you. You're going to have to take matters into your own hands. The cat smiled as the lift passed through its head. Go union, and you can save yourself and your country too. It's us against them, folks. It's that simple. The lift put the worker in reach of the projection device, and he reared back and smashed it with a hammer. The cartoon cat disappeared as chunks of metal and plastic cascaded down to the concrete floor below. Megan Calhoun walked behind the nurses' station of the oncology department at Licking Memorial Hospital. She noticed an envelope in each of the black plastic inboxes for the nurses. She grabbed hers and ripped it open. After Calhoun read the letter, her nostrils flared and she clenched her jaw. Megan barged into the director of nursing's office. She had her feet up on the desk and was chatting on the phone with the hospital CEO about the Ohio State Buckeyes' upcoming gridiron matchup with the Purdue Boilermakers. What the fuck is this about? Megan demanded, waving the letter. The director scowled and put her feet on the floor. Hey, Tony, I gotta run, she said into the microphone. One of my nurses wants to talk to me. I heard. Calhoun? Yup. The sailor vocabulary gave her away. The director chuckled and ended the call with a mouse click. She sat back and folded her arms across her chest. Seriously, Kathy, what is this about? Megan demanded. The government's making more cutbacks to save money. Yeah, but a 15% pay cut? That's outrageous. Sorry, Megan, but that's how much reimbursement for nursing services got cut. It's not fair, and you know it. The director waved her finger. Listen, the government made the cuts retroactive to the first of the year, which means the hospital has to pay the government money back for services it has already approved of and paid for. Maybe you'd like to bring back your share of that money? Megan was puffing short, angry breaths from her nose. She crumpled the paper into a ball. Fuck your pay cut and fuck all of you. She threw the wadded up paper at the director. I quit. Megan Calhoun slammed through the outside door of her house and stomped through the kitchen in her white tennis shoes, lab coat, and green scrubs. She tossed her keys into a metal bowl, sent her purse sliding across a kitchen table, and released her long black hair from its ponytail. She flung open a cherry kitchen cabinet door and clanked out a pint glass. Megan put it beneath a tap on the right side of the refrigerator and pulled the lever. Amber ale poured frothily into the glass. She flipped back the lever when the glass was half full and took a big swig. She took a breath and wiped her mouth with the sleeve of her nursing coat. Megan finished the beer with a second gulp and stepped back to the tap and began filling it a second time. Tom Calhoun walked through the kitchen door in overalls and a sawdust-covered denim ball cap. Home early? He asked. Obviously, Megan snapped as she swiped several renegade strands of hair from her face. She squinted her blue eyes and stared at her husband. We're off the grid, right? Yeah, he answered as he scratched the back of his head. So we make all our own electricity, even enough to run our tractors and trucks. Yup, and I make so much I trade most of it. And we grow all our own food? When was the last time you went to a grocery store? And our mortgage is paid off, she continued. Of course, as well as all of our vehicles and equipment. We don't owe anyone a dime. Do we have enough money to pay our property taxes? For decades, even if they double. Good, she said, nodding her head. Hell, darling, he said, leaning back and flopping his arms to the side. We even make our own beer, down to growing our own barley and hops. Megan smiled. That's very good. Tom retrieved a glass from the still open cabinet and filled it. He leaned against the refrigerator and crossed his legs. What's going on, dear? We've been through all of this a dozen times. She ran her right hand through her shoulder-length black hair. I've always thought your survivalist scheme was a bit extreme, but I'm damn glad for it now. She sighed and dropped her gaze to her tan leather flats before re-engaging Tom's brown eyes. I quit my job. A smug smile grew on Tom's face. I've been telling you to for years. Why today? All the nurses got a pay cut this morning. She pounded the tile counter with a fist. That's the fourth fucking pay cut in the last 10 years. Every time our damn healthcare system starts running out of money, the government goes after the workers. They're shooting fish in a barrel. Most of you have been in the business too long to move on to something else. Well, this nurse just moved on. So you finally had your no mas moment? Yup. She exhaled heavily. And the pathetic thing is we can get the same shitty healthcare whether or not I have a job. She shook her head. What a system. Well, now I can get a little help around here, Tom said with a smile, especially with the homeschool kids. Speaking of them, are any here? Courtney Tinzer is out in the poultry barn working on her ag science project. Tyler Halverson is supposed to drop off a draft of his senior paper this afternoon for my review. What's it on? He's analyzing the work of several economists on the impact of monetary policy on the Great Depression. The kid's only 17 and he understands how our economy works better than any president ever has. That's not saying much, Megan said, shaking her head. I have to say you do a pretty good job with these kids. When you first told me 15 years ago that you were going to homeschool Danny and Jeremy, I thought you were nuts. How could a maintenance man do better than professionally trained teachers? But they got a much better education from you, even if they don't appreciate it yet. They will, but remember, I don't blame teachers for our schools being so lousy. They aren't allowed to teach. They comply with procedures and fill out paperwork. Actually, it's a credit to our teachers that the kids don't graduate stupider than when they started. Some of them do. Megan clenched her jaw. You've been right all along. This country has turned into a total piece of shit. She raised her eyes and saw him stroking his pointed chin. He motioned to her with his knobby hands. Come here, he said. Megan set her glass on the counter and walked to her husband's outstretched arms. She folded her arms across her chest and leaned against him. He wrapped his lean arms around her and clenched her in a vice-like grip. Everything's going to be all right, darling, he said. Please tell me it's going to stay that way, she whispered. Don't worry, it will. Calhoun Land is the safest place in North America. So, okay, that's the end of episode 14 of The Eagle Has Crashed. Hope you're enjoying the story and hope you have a great week. As always, The Eagle Has Crashed is available from Clear Peak Press, from Amazon, from Barnes & Noble, at the iTunes Store, at the Sony Store, at Smashwords, and other retailers. So have a great week, and we'll get back to October of 2029 next Sunday.